form. Okay, so, John, give us an update on this bogus thing, which now, so what's the stat? Is it real or is it bogus?
Well, it's bogus. However, our lawyer and legal team has looked into it, and even though it's bogus, there is case law and precedence that they can continue on with the eviction even though it's not signed, even though it's not on letterhead, even though it doesn't identify who really owns the land other than MOI, which we found out is Ministry of Infrastructure.
Which is it's Crown land representing the Queen.
Technically. So what's happened is this document, though it is not properly legal, case law allows them to act on it.
So someone wanted to play a prank on us, cut and paste that, and posted it up that had nothing to do with the MOI or the courts.
Yeah. Could have done this? No, because this was brought out by a person from Osgoode Hall and a uniformed person of Osgoode Hall Court Service.
We missed that part. And that was at 3 o'clock yesterday, Thursday.
We have witnesses. I have spoken to witnesses who watched them come out of that building.
That is new.
One of them in a court services uniform. And they posted these in a couple locations, tossed one into the occupied, but didn't actually hand them to anyone.
Okay.
So if you'd like, I'm actually going to read that. It's basically...
No, we read it.
Okay.
We went over that.
Well, now...
So we want the update. So it's going to court.
It's going to court Monday morning.
At the Superior Court behind us?
No. It's actually, because it's a civil matter, it will be heard in the court building 361, which is one over.
From this Superior
Court.
Court.
This building, but the one over, which is actually a Manulife building, not a government building, where we rent court space in that Manulife building.
Okay.
Now what has happened?
So Monday morning,
our
lawyers are taking this bogus, which we have to now treat it. Now, it might be so bogus that the court might not even accept that as proper evidence.
We don't care, because what we're actually asking for in our declaration is that any and all orders or notices evicting or removing the applicants, among other protesters, from 361 University Avenue are of no force and effect, pending determination of the constitutional questions on their merits. In other words, what this does is whether this is a good or not eviction.
What's this?
This is the notice of motion. And this
that we're going to present.
This is already going to be presented at 9 o'clock at room 801, I believe, in the 361
next Monday,
University Ave. What we're doing is presenting these motions, and that is the temporary declaration that any and all evictions be null and void, pending a constitutional review.
Nice.
Number 2, and the alternative, a temporary declaration that the applicants are constitutionally exempted from the Trespass to Property Act, Ontario Provincial Offences Act, and City Toronto Municipal Code and bylaws as they pertain to their eviction or removal from the protest sites, and an order that the applicants and fellow protesters be permitted to remain in the protest sites and maintain their encampments, including overnight, until such time as the constitutional questions have been determined on their merits by the court. Now, the grounds for the motion are the moving. This was written by Emir Crown, who happens to be a University of Windsor law professor with 2 masters and is working on the PhD in law, which is above and beyond standard lawyers.
Nice.
So this guy knows his stuff.
Nice.
Now our pro bono lawyer is Omar Haredai of Fleet Street, and he is doing all of this for free.
Fleet Street, Toronto.
Yes. Well, Fleet Street is the name of the lawyer's firms. Fleet Street.
And there is a Fleet Street in Toronto.
So this has been named, this actual document is John Erb as plaintiff versus, as defendant, the Minister of Infrastructure. Right.
So this is Erb versus moi.
Erb versus moi. So it's Erb and protesters. So it allows all the protesters associated with Erb. Now, just to be interesting, I went up to visit.
And you're John Herb.
I am. So I'm Herb versus moi, and I went.
Do you have
up
a
to
copy
the
of that for the live stream team?
Yeah, I can basically pass it on to you. I do think I
Good.
have one copy left.
Good.
So what's happened is, and that is, I went up to the Ministry of Infrastructure's office today, up at 900 Bay Street in the Mowat building, and went into the deputy and minister's office, and I sat with Paul, who writes policy for the deputy minister and the minister, and he didn't know this was going on. He had no idea.
Paul from policy.
Paul from policy. And I said, did you know this was going on? And he said, oh, not really. And so now he's all, well, if the MOI is going to kick people out, or in the name of the MOI, he called the person from the government who was supposed to call me, a guy named Bill Moore, I believe. And Bill Moore was supposed to call me today on behalf of the government. He's some kind of senior staffing person liaison. But of course, it's taken him a day. He hasn't called me back. But as you can see, it's past 5 o'clock. No one's here. The police, I walked them from City Hall this morning on a tour of the encampment. They asked what our
Toronto Police
intentions were.
Services.
Yeah, they were awesome. And they basically said, well, we're not really interested in anything except illegal activity. And as far as we're concerned, this is pretty much Crown land now.
Which they have no jurisdiction.
Exactly. So they're sitting back and watching it all happen.
Now, who has jurisdiction on Crown land? RCMP and OPP?
OPP and RCMP.
Okay.
So technically we're waiting for either of those two groups to come forward. But since they haven't come forward during the day, and usually I've noticed that OPP or RCMP or even Toronto Police don't act unless they have a representative of the property. So in other words, usually they come up and they have some representative of the property with them when they push us out. That's how they did it with Occupy Toronto in the Bellevue Park and in other parks.
Now remember when we got that this would be our second eviction notice in terms of orders from GA to Occupy. The first one from St. James Park, remember, it was a media circus. There was a handful of file officers. I don't know. It seemed like 100 cops.
Yeah,
the third in command of Toronto Police Services messenger was there.
So it was a big deal.
I mean, it was huge.
This was sneaky.
And yeah.
This was like, they looked out, they saw that the main people weren't there, they run out, they stick some things attach them onto...
Right here.
Look,
with the twist ties, or zip ties.
Twist ties still.
And look at what we replaced it with.
What is our one demand?
Yeah, this is what we replaced. This is how they zip tied it in a sleeve, plastic sleeve. So now we replaced that. Oh, or wait a minute. No, this was always here.
What, the twist tie wasn't? No, this twist tie was
Oh,
here.
so we added this after the eviction notice. Okay.
So the twist tie was put on by them.
The zip tie is
called. Zip tie, okay. Now, this is what I think works. We carried this on the Bridge the Divide. And I said, well, what is we're a global cultural movement meant to end socioeconomic disparity and suffering with care of the earth, care of people, and share the surplus.
Yep.
I think that's pretty easy.
Share the wealth.
I mean, I don't know any Occupy people who won't agree with that one.
Nope.
It's kind of general.
You agree?
To cover
yeah,
it.
I agree.
We have it's
something
consensus.
That I haven't something I didn't understand was, I mean,
yes.
You're saying like it's a global cultural movement.
Look, the tent speaks again.
The tent speaks. And
live stream here.
Oh my God.
John goes. So basically, the great news is, hey, we're taking it into the courts and ensuring that even if they do hand us an eviction notice, we get to laugh at it and say, sorry, a court decided otherwise. Thank you, Sharon.
That's new in the world.
Yeah. Well, John,
yes, that was great.
Here's the kicker. This is the kicker, okay? This bogus thing created a monster. Okay?
Yes.
If you remember, the GA motion was for only a 3-day occupation, okay? We were actually going to leave, right? Probably by 5 on Thursday, right? Because initially, the budget deliberations was going to be 3 days, but then they were scared because Occupy Toronto stopped the cuts, and the unions were there, and they crunched it all in one day, Tuesday. We discussed it on Tuesday, GA, and we decided, okay, maybe we should call it quits.
That's right,
but
3 days.
The consensus was, let's keep it 3 days. So, for the most part, we were going to leave.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, this bogus thing shows up at 3 on Thursday, January 19, 2012.
2 hours to leave.
And all of a sudden, Well, wait a minute. Now, and the mainstream media is reporting it.
Yes.
So the thing is that then we could leave.
No,
'Cause then we
now
would-
they've
we
told
would-
us to.
it
We've
would
got to
be-
actually make sure that they actually enforce it and see how they enforce it.
Yeah.
So what's
they,
funny is the newspaper reports today saying that we've been evicted and we're no longer here. They're insinuating we were evicted.
and look, CTV last night was saying there was one tent. Now there's two under there, one back there. The occupied is 4,
there's 2 there.
5, 6, 7. Just like last
here.
night.
And we
There's
had,
2
like,
under
well
here.
more than
See
a
what's
dozen
going
people
on
here.
in the live stream.
Okay, wait.